there's definitely still some gaps there for me, but the well, it's just a new topic, so it's kind of, I'm trying not to ground it too much. I'm trying to let it be a little gassy.
Yeah. Well, I talk about it as if I have it all grounded. But.
Right. Well, you're just trying to get it out, but get it into words. It seemed like you said that zero allows for somewhere to go with energy that you don't have a place for. So in a way, it's facilitating the coherence around other chakras. So that condensation you're talking about, is it a facilitator of that? Is it a conduit for it?
What's it?
Zero chakra. I have a sense of what you're saying, but it doesn't make sense yet. But
do you remember that Eric Weinstein, Joe Rogan thing I had you look at?
I think so.
And remember Eric Weinstein's talking about all that quantum physics stuff?
Right.
And Rogan's like...
Too high.
Yeah, too high. I feel like we have that going on only again, I'm pretending that I know shit like Weinstein does.
Fair enough.
But I'm more like Rogan was compared to the subject matter.
It's probably why you didn't bring up zero chakra when we started talking about subtle energy. It's less there.
Yeah.
Because is it, so you think about is zero chakra like ground presencing itself in our system? So you talk about consciousness presencing it in our being, right? In this expression of consciousness. So ground is universal. Primordial ground is universal. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Is zero chakra our presencing of primordial ground in our system? Is that one way to say it?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like the entry point.
Okay.
But yeah, you could say the zero chakra, let's say, is and you hear about chakras below the zero chakra, et cetera, et cetera. But let's just say zero chakra is the first one. It's like, primordial ground's first incarnation, first level of organization is the zero chakra.
Okay.
The zero chakra takes primordial ground energy and organizes it to that degree.
Right.
And then, ideally, energy moves on into first chakra, and then first chakra organizes it again.
So primordial ground moves between chakras. That's what's being organized at each.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And as it goes up the chakras, it gets more and more refined, more and more organized.
Right. I think the context for what was being refined and organized in that process, I don't know if we've called that primordial ground before.
Yeah. Everyone's talking energy, but
right.
But as far as these different, whatever you want to call it, modes or states or types of energy, because I'm saying that energy in the form of the primordial ground is different than the energy that has been organized by a third chakra, for example.
Right.
Just like heat, like an example I'm using all the time with my clients is I've got this furnace, and there's a flame in the furnace, and it's like, well, the heat from that flame is being converted, and then it blows out the vents, right? And then it heats the air molecules in the room, and then the air molecules in the room vibrating at a faster rate interact with your body, right? And then it heats your body. And it's like, okay, but it all goes back to that flame in there is where that heat's coming from.
Right.
And it's just in a different state. And you don't want to go and touch the flame directly. It's like, well, let's just get warm really fast. Let's just go stick your face in that flame. And it's like, wait, that needs to be converted and made more diffuse, and it needs to go through a state change or two. And it sounds funny, but when someone has Kundalini rising,
I'm only laughing because I mean that's a spiritual emergency, like what you're
Exactly.
describing.
Exactly, yeah. And a person can experience literal burning in their body, burning, nerve pain, burning tissue pain, and or if it moves through a different part of the body without each chakra doing enough
Refinement,
then you get psychotic breaks and you get mania and you get people acting like you did.
not like you just wrote it out, everything's fine.
Yeah.
Compare trauma.
But yeah, this way I'm describing the energy field, again, it's surprising to me that, and I'm sure it's out there, I just haven't found it, but it's like I'm describing the way I perceive it and understand it, and I haven't seen this anywhere else.
Right.
And it's like, well, I don't understand why.
I think even the most, I think it's so hard to wrangle a conceptual description of these things that often it loses touch with the energetic inspiration for it. So I was just thinking about that podcast I sent you the other day about that awakening OD. Like the way she describes things, it's obvious to me that she like woke up or whatever and like has, insights to these things. And there's like the egoic necessity to conceptually frame things that is always going to be limiting. So it's like you could find someone describe it and they could have the exact same understanding as you. And because you're reading what they wrote about it, it may never feel quite right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the translator isn't going to be there for every aspect of it.
Yeah, I get that. And I feel like I feel like there's some principles that I'm suggesting
that just aren't there,
that are important, that, just like on the physical level, tensegrity. It's like the tensegrity thing isn't just some subjective twist on it.
Right. I think I was thinking more about like the consciousness stuff, and the energetic stuff. But I hear you that there are just things that aren't there. Like I definitely agree with that. But the relation to ground piece of it that we've just been talking about, I feel like must be there to some extent. But
to go back to the sports stuff, for example, the zero chakra, first chakra relationship is huge as far as what's going on in a person's legs and feet, for example, and how they are interacting energetically between their body and the ground. A person whose zero chakra, first chakra interaction is too open and disperse, they're going to have flat feet and they're going to have kind of weak feet. And so they're not going to get as much pop when they're trying to move around or jump or run. What I see a lot in athletes, especially like martial artists, for example, martial artists have taken so many hits that often their first chakra just lives in this defensive contraction in relation to environment, right? So in the same way that if it's cold outside, you go into this contraction, right? If you hear a loud bang, you're going to contract because your system is recognizing, oh shit, the environment's hostile. And so then it goes into this defensive contraction to try to defend against the hostile environment. And as I've talked about with trauma, what happens is you go into the defensive contraction and then you split from it. And then the defensive contraction just stays in a contracted state. And now you don't even know it, right? So the muscle just stays tight. The chakra just stays tight. The nerve line just stays offline, et cetera. And so martial artists have been kicked and punched and, all this stuff to where often it's traumatic and so the first chakra is just in this contracted state in relation to zero environment. And it really impairs overall functioning, but they don't even know it. So they're sort of walking around just by way of analogy, it's like if you're walking around, when if you go snow skiing, you put on your ski boots, but if you got to walk like, from your car to the slope or from the slope back to your car, if you've ever walked in those rigid boots, I mean, it's just kind of ridiculous.
It's just like flopping, your toes flopping over your...
Yeah, right. And there's not a lot of feel between your foot and the ground.
Right.
It's like you can't really utilize the sensory information nor the muscular movement and balancing that ideally would be happening via the feet. It's like you got to go up higher and be using way more of your hips and your back and your proprioception. Whereas when you get the boots off, it's like, oh, you can start paying attention to organs, sensory organs down at the feet level again. And it's like, oh, okay, this is, I got way more of a feel for this now, right? So in a similar way, if you were wearing those ski boots and then you had to drive your car, it's like, oh man, trying to work those pedals, you wouldn't even be able to feel them. You just have to go by, okay, I think I must be on the brake because I'm starting to slow down. But you wouldn't have that same feel for it. And I'm saying that I see a lot of people in general, but let's say martial artists, where they're sort of in that state. They don't know it, but they're not. They don't have the same feel that they, probably once did.
Right.
But the work I do can help them get it back. And I know that happened for me. It's happened a lot in my face because I had a lot of face trauma. And I had face surgeries and mouth surgeries and all this stuff. And it made it so that my face wasn't communicating with the environment at all. And little by little, I came to realize this and came to realize that, oh, it's affecting everything I do. And when I'm running, for example, it's like, well, I'm running with my face as the fixed point. And
it's exhausting.
It's exhausting and it doesn't work right. I can't rotate my shoulders and hips the correct way. Or I can't do the right golf swing if my anchor point's in my face. But it's like I didn't know this,
right?
And so as I came to realize that and came to practice, and I remember when I started to realize some of this stuff and started to play with it and be able to shift intentionally, it's like I was on a treadmill and I was just running at a reasonable pace or whatever on the treadmill, and then it was like, oh, I'm going to shift off of my face and head and shift back to just kind of more of a zero chakra orientation. And suddenly I could feel the treadmill way more. It instead of the treadmill being there in concept and there in my vision, the treadmill was there via actual physical sensory information from my feet, right?
Yeah.
And I had that kind of perceptual orientation, but I almost fell off the treadmill. Because it was like, oh shit,
overload.
Yeah. It's like, wait a minute. I don't even know how to balance like that.
Right.
I mean, I almost hurt myself and I had to,
because your ego thought it knew how to run.
Yeah, exactly. I had to slow the treadmill way down and
then you can maintain that awareness.
And then I could maintain it, but it felt like, riding with no hands. It felt wobbly.
Yeah.
Because my way that I had gotten good at balancing and the point I had gotten good at organizing around, I was shifting. And I was shifting it to a better point, but it was going to be a transition process. And the same concept that applies to, it's like initially I was less good at even staying on the treadmill, let alone running fast. But if I stay with it, which I did, I not only got to where I was much better at staying on the treadmill and at running much faster. But there was this, this interim period where it got worse before it got better.
Right.
And again, it's the same thing mentally, emotionally, et cetera, that there are these points we organize around that aren't necessarily the best point to organize around. And seeing this, I mean, that's the basis of all my work is I'm I've gotten better and better at seeing physically, emotionally, mentally, imaginally, spiritually. Where's this person orienting? Where are they anchoring? Where are they identifying? Because that all is determining what points are they organizing around in their system. And everything, not only their function, which is performance, but their sense of self, which, is development, their sense of what's real and what's not, which is the awakening stuff, is all just symptomatic of what points are they organizing around.
Well, it's so cool. I feel like that's a great story about the treadmill thing. I think the idea that's been like stuck with me ever since you said it was your ego thinks it knows how to ride a bike. And like that's just been like in my head ever since. And I think I was doing some push-ups the other day, and like I was thinking about that, and I was like, I'm doing these push-ups with my head right now.
Yeah,
it's like it's so weird, and it's like we've talked. Like you also just the concept of like mental boundaries on your performance that are like totally arbitrary. Like you think like I'm going to do this many push-ups, and it's like then that's I'm going to do 10 push-ups, and the 10th push-up is going to be the hardest push-up. Because why? Because like I've decided, and obviously there's limits on strength and like developing strength, whatever. But there are these hurdles when your ego is doing the work that the body is actually doing. And it kind of resonated again when you're talking about, running from your face, not from your face, but running oriented from your face. That your face, I don't know. I mean, can your face even run a mile? Like it's impossible, right? But then you're going to expect your face to like keep up with what your body's doing. It's pretty profound shift there. And I just remember working with you too, that like working with you and you help bring like awareness to where you're orienting from and shifting that then the physical process is totally alien. So like even just walking, we were talking earlier about that, what part is static or what is the body moving around, that when that starts to shift, like I remember for me, like it felt like I was having to like kick my legs out from under me instead of just walking. And it was just a very, very foreign, disorienting experience.
Reorienting.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Very strange reorienting experience. And it parallels work in the psyche too, right? Like it's not just that pattern of getting worse before it gets better is kind of in, like you're saying, in any of these different areas that you're doing the work in performance or development or consciousness, because the existing structure has to be, reoriented or deprogrammed.
Yeah.
Going back to the zero chakra thing, I'm not sure how it relates yet, but something that came to mind was, I'll see if I can find it and I'll send it to you. But there's like an Alan Watts talk where he's talking about if you look at a tree and like an apple tree, there's apples growing on it. You could say that tree is appling, it's making apples. It's like if you zoom out and you look at the planet, you could say that planet is peopling, like it's making people. These people are growing out of the planet. And thinking about I hear the distinction you're making between like gross ground and primordial ground. And there's a way in which gross ground is, connected to the history of the universe, and that like our physical connection to ground through our feet is a connection back to the start of life, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's an analog there in that our connection through our feet to the ground, just bring it back to that exercise that we are, we've come up out of this, we've been peopled out of this planet, and that all traces back to the same historic point.
Yeah.
It felt related, and just the image. I just like that image, but
ashes to ashes.
Right. Stardust to stardust. Yeah, I'd never heard the concept of zero chakra at all, so it's fun to hear about. I think the example, your running example, is just really good about some of the ramifications of that, and just the the relationship to zero to first. It just feels like it just makes things more, the system becomes clearer, right? Or like what the building blocks are for that understanding makes more sense. It's like we were missing a piece of what, like once primordial ground gets to first chakra, like a lot has already happened, right?
Yeah, right.
Like there was
well, hopefully a lot has happened.
Well, yeah. I'm saying like it's all going on regardless, like you said, but
I'm saying a lot of people, their zero chakra is not doing its job.
Right.
So the energy is hitting first chakra, and then they got anxiety all the time.
Right.
And it's like, well, the cure for your anxiety is to get your zero chakra doing what it's supposed to. You know, the medical industry just gives you drugs, and like no one's talking about that. It's about zero chakra.
Do you have an exercise for zero chakra, just for beginning to bring awareness to it?
As far as bringing awareness to it,
we did the room thing, and I think that was a sense of space felt by that.
Yeah. One thing that comes to mind, for example, if you're, and again, I don't think this is by accident. There's a lot of these analogies where it's like it seems too close. I don't know if just because the mind is, looking through a lens of both things, but that idea of as above, so below, you know what I mean? Like these principles seem to play out. Humans spend all this time walking around on their feet. And then at a certain point, we shifted and one of the primary modes of travel became sitting on a horse. And when you're sitting on a horse, there's this very different thing going on, right? Because now, for example, if your weight's in the saddle, meaning versus the stirrups, or let me just say, there's that relationship. Same with on a bike. You can stand on the pedals and or you can sit on the seat.
Right.
When you're standing on the pedals, it's zero chakra. It's analogous to zero chakra. When you sit down on the seat, now it's up in first, like meaning literally where the chakra is in the body, right?
Right.
But whether you're on a horse or not, or whether you're on a bike or not, just sitting in your chair, for example, it's like, okay, look, there's your feet and your orientation to the floor, and that's different than your butt and its orientation to the chair. And you can even start to put some weight, right? If you kind of start to shift and put some weight in your feet, your whole body goes, okay, whoa, wait a minute, that's a different deal. Are we going to stand up right now on our feet, or are we going to shift and sit, in our butt?
Right.
And there are these two different orientations. So when you even slightly shift towards that, you're gonna move towards standing on, or putting all your weight into your feet. It's like now your perceptual field has to start paying attention to the environment around you, ideally, right? Whereas once you sit in the chair and go, actually, no, I'm just going to orient my ass to this seat, it's like, all right, now I don't have to worry about falling down, right? Now I don't have to worry about what objects are around me. I'm anchoring into this chair. I'm not anchoring into the floor. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so a person starts to feel dizzy, for example, and it's like, well, you better sit down, right? And it's like, well, why? How does that fix it? It's like, well, because now you're not having to use that part of your system.
Right.
And, depending on how dizzy you are, maybe the chair is enough to
stabilize that.
To stabilize you, or maybe not.
You need a bucket.
Or as I heard Dean Martin say, you're not drunk if you can lay on the floor without holding on. But that shift, right? Those two different shifts, and we just do it without thinking about it. Obviously, we stand up and sit down many times a day. But what we're having to pay attention to changes. Again, just like in your car, if you're driving down the road, you need to be paying attention outside the cab of your car primarily. You need to be anchored there. If you park your car, all right, now you can bring your attention back in to inside the cab of your car. But they're very different environments. And each chakra is a different environment. It's a different terrain. It's a different dimension. And tracking these dimensions is important.
I think those are both great examples. I could feel a shift in myself, especially with the car one, from driving to parking.
Mm-hmm.
And also think about the anxiety of like trying to do both at once.
Yeah, right.
Like talk about texting, right? And the physical sense of like trying to look at a text while you're driving, which of course I've never done.
No,
in my life.
me either.
It's never happened. It's illegal anyway. So, but like that, I could feel that tension when you talk about shifting between the two, and that anchoring in one and not the other while trying to do something else is such a hazard.
Yeah, and that anxiety or tension that you're feeling, if you got to get up on stage and give a speech, there's going to be a tendency to anchor in yourself instead of anchoring in your environment and just talking to the crowd, right?
Right.
It's the same basic phenomenon that's happening. And if you go all the way just into yourself, you may stabilize, but now the crowd's going to say, what a narcissistic fuck. You know, and you're going to lose them. If you can anchor in the crowd and start to feel safely anchored there, then there's going to be a nice rapport with the crowd. And whether it's a crowd or whether it's just a single person, right?
Right.
And again, these are the dynamics of relating. It's like if you just do it in yourself, just like in the car, it's like, well, you're not going to drive very well, right? If you're just paying attention inside the cab of the car. That dynamic tension and the anxiety it can produce is that thing, whether you're going from, cab of your car to outside, or whether self to other. And these things are playing out constantly, and getting a better understanding of, all right, what is really going on and why, especially when someone has a chronic pattern, then there's change that can happen if you work with that pattern consciously.
Right. I just keep thinking about, there's like this joke about the sound, like a dad sound, getting up and down from a seat. Like sitting down, and then like groaning whenever you get up or down. It's like shifting between those two things. It's like you have to express the grinding of that gear.
Yeah.
So, and it's cool to have that. I feel like once you recognize that feeling, you'll recognize it in more and more contexts.
Yeah. Good point.
So that was cool. You created that feeling talking about it. So
obviously a deeper aspect of that is, it's one thing to notice it. If you stay with it and notice it long enough, you're going to start to notice what the problem is. You're going to know it. Like if you have a pattern, if you stay conscious of it, or I should say, if you stay aware of it and or conscious of it, but even if you just are aware of it, what's going to start to emerge in your awareness
cause
is the stuff that was the reason you separated out from it to begin with. And then what you're going to run into if there's trauma is you're going to notice I can't consciously hold that. Just like energetically, it's like your mind goes, that's a 500 watt thing, and I've only got a 100 watt, container here.
Yeah.
And so you're either going to defend or split or, get away. But then that's the idea of, well, maybe there's someone else that can help you, that can come in with their consciousness and help you hold that charge. And then via their consciousness, because maybe they didn't split off from that place, and maybe they have developed a 500 watt container. And then it's okay, if I have a 500 watt container, then I can say, use mine. Go into let me go into an empathic merge with you. Your subtle field will start interacting with mine, and this change will happen to where the result will end up being, now you do have a container for that.
Right.
What?
Oh, I'm just waiting for you to drop in and that's what the dimension approach is.
There should be an approach that
somebody should do something about.
Yeah.
If you want to learn more about the Dimension Approach, please visit dimensionapproach.com.